Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mountainside Podcast. Our guest for this episode is Ted Harvey. He is a former Colorado senator who is now devoting a ton of his time to educating the Colorado voting public on an upcoming ballot initiative to reintroduce wolves to Colorado. I highly recommend if you live in Colorado or a neighboring state, or maybe you just visit the Rocky Mountain region, that you listen to this episode in its entirety. There's a ton of useful information in here. We kind of bounced all over the place in our conversation, but Ted was very informative and very well educated on this upcoming initiative. And I know that we normally don't get into politics on this show, but I feel like this is something that is going to impact Colorado outdoor life and some of the outdoor sports that we like to enjoy. Whether it's hunting, fishing, mountain biking, rock climbing, this may affect you in the future. So please check it out. Enjoy the episode. Okay, cool. All right, and we're live. Welcome, Ted.
Good afternoon.
Happy to have you here on the Mountainside Podcast.
Thank you. I'm honored.
Yeah, appreciate your time. And, we contacted you and your organization specifically to talk about wolves and gray wolves coming to Colorado possibly after this upcoming ballot election we got going on. And your organization has put out some fantastic material that is just really educational on some of the issues that we might face coming up with this. But before we really dive into that, can you tell me a little bit about your background and how long you've been in Colorado and what you do?
Sure. Well, I am Air Force brat, so I moved to Colorado when I was 14 years old, a long time ago. Graduated in high school down in Colorado Springs and got involved in politics. I served in the Colorado legislature for 13 years. I've served on the Ag and Natural Resource Committee all 13 years that I was in the legislature. So natural resource policy is one of my passions. I have a master's in environmental policy and law from the University of Colorado, Denver, and been involved in the natural resource policy for many, many, many years. I'm a hunter. I'm a trail runner. I do the Pikes.
Oh, awesome!
I do the Pikes Peak Ascent and Marathon every year, and it's coming up in here in 3 weeks. So
nice.
If we can still run it, I signed up for many, many races this year, and they all were canceled. This is the only one that wasn't canceled, was the Pikes Peak. So hopefully they don't cancel it between now and then.
For 1 second. All right, Ted. Sorry about that. Right. A little technical difficulty there. But you were saying you're an ultra-marathon runner, trail runner, marathon runner?
Trail runner, marathoner on the Pikes Peak. I've done a lot of trail runnings around the state, and I'm passionate about the outdoors.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming in and talking to us. I'm excited to learn about some upcoming issues that we might face with the gray wolf integration, me being a Colorado native and growing up here, as a kid, we never had those issues. I mean, we had mountain lions and, type A predators, I guess is what you would call them. Right. But they're so elusive and you don't see them that often. And I've spent a little time up in northern Montana and some time in British Columbia and up in Canada. And that was my first experience with seeing them was in Yellowstone and kind of that northern region. And I just always have thought, man, what a cool animal, but at the same time, what a kind of mischievous, just something that it made me feel uneasy,
Sure.
And I still kind of have those feelings today, and that was maybe 20 years ago when I saw that first wolf. So I'm excited to hear what you guys have. You have a ton of biologists that you're working with. You have a bunch of wildlife experts. You have some former people from Game and Fish. So you really have a lot of people that are feeding information to the public. It's not just you per se, correct?
Right. I mean, like I said, I was in the legislature for 13 years. This is not something that just all of a sudden came out of nowhere. The Division of Parks and Wildlife has been studying this and working on this issue for many, many years under Republican and Democrat administrations. And that there's plenty of research out there to talk about what the impact of wolf introduction is. And there's plenty of research that has happened up in Montana and Idaho and now Wyoming, and the impacts that the wolf has had in Wyoming as well.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get into that in a minute. And I mean, fortunately, we have those other states to learn from, right? That have
Sure.
kind of went through all these hoops and procedures and what's worked and what hasn't.
Yep.
And as I've done a little bit of research, I don't know much. And like I said, I'm going to learn with our listeners here, talking to you. And I'm sure that we're going to do more than one podcast on this too. So if we don't answer
Right.
all the questions today, I urge our listeners to keep paying attention, because this is something that we're going to tackle right up towards November. Because although we don't really dive into politics on this show per se, I think that this is important to anybody that uses the outdoors, and
I think it's one of
change.
the most important issue coming up in this election for people that are, regardless of what your passion is in the outdoors, whether you're a runner or a hunter or whatever, this is going to be an issue that's going to impact our lives if your livelihood is in the backcountry. And like you said, there's plenty of resources to go look at, whether it's all of the studies that have been done in Yellowstone when they reintroduced the wolves into Yellowstone, and the positive and negative impacts that the wolf has had there. And I think this ballot issue is going to go under the radar screen, because the presidential campaign, Trump and Biden, they're going to suck all the air out of the room. There's not going to be television ads. It's going to be wall-to-wall television ads for the presidential election.
Airtime's going to get real expensive.
The U.S. Senate race, it's probably the number one targeted state in the country between Cory Gardner and Hickenlooper, and that's going to take whatever oxygen is still in the room. That U.S. Senate race is going to take that out. And so I don't think the average voter out there is going to know much about the initiative that's been put on the ballot to reintroduce wolves into Colorado. So I want to thank you for your efforts to try to get out the message about what truly is the science out there behind bringing wolves into
Yeah, that's really
Colorado.
what I want to get to the bottom of. And I mean, we're going to have people from both sides of the fence, just so I can hear both sides, and then we'll let our listeners make that decision, whatever they think is best. But, I can't wait. I have a ton of questions to ask you. And I guess the first question that I get that comes up a lot when I start talking about this issue with anybody is they want to know how many wolf attacks there's been, how many are recorded, that sort of thing. Do you know any of the numbers on that, or?
Well, the numbers of actual wolf attacks against humans, they're pretty small. They say that the wolf is the apex predator, but there's one above the wolf, and that's us, and they're more afraid of us than we are of them. But there is definitely a history of wolf attacks throughout the United States and in Canada, where these wolves are going to be coming from. They're Canadian gray wolves. So there's definitely record of that. But the incidence against humans is pretty low. But that doesn't mean that when you drop them into a state of 6 million people, that incidence won't happen.
Sure, and we're going to get into this some more, but I think some of the issues are kind of underlying, or stuff that you wouldn't really catch right off the bat.
That's right.
And we'll get into some of that here in a minute. But my second question is, I'm a little confused on the whole thing, because I've heard it come both ways. And from my understanding, the gray wolf is not native species to the Colorado Rocky Mountain region, or even like maybe into Wyoming, right? And that's what's been released.
Well, that's not exactly true.
Okay.
The major species of the gray wolf is in Canada with the Canadian gray wolf, and it was in Colorado as well, but it was a different subspecies than the Canadian gray wolf. So the subspecies. Sorry,
that's what I was getting at.
That is is an important issue for everybody to understand, because the words, the message that is being delivered, people need to understand exactly what it means when people say that the gray wolf has been in Colorado, 100 years ago. That is actually true. The gray wolf has been, but the subspecies of the Canadian gray wolf is a much, much larger wolf than the subspecies that was in Colorado. And so I think we need to make sure as we're voting on this, we all understand what we're voting on, and we're being honest with the voters that it is not the wolf that was here 100 years ago. That wolf is extinct now for multiple reasons.
So we're grabbing the next best thing if it does get voted in, I guess, right?
It is a wolf.
A wolf, yeah. Just not quite the same size.
It's a much larger wolf than the extinct
subspecies. So the gray wolf is
a
much larger wolf than
right.
the subspecies.
Right.
Okay. Wow. So back to, we know that there's not very many recorded attacks on humans, although I think there was one in Idaho in the last couple years.
There was one in Canada.
Oh, okay.
Last
Maybe
year
it was
too.
There was a
family that was in their tent, and in the middle of the night, all of a sudden, the wolf is tearing down the tent and trying to get in, and the father jumps in the middle of between the wolf and the kids, and the wolf starts pulling the man out, and the wife is screaming and everything, and a guy who's in the same campground, comes running over with his flashlight and sees this wolf pulling out the man. God. And he kicks the wolf as hard as he possibly can, and the wolf doesn't let go. And he finally kicks him again, and the wolf lets go, and the guy is able to get free, and the two guys chase him out of the campground. But they eventually went and got that wolf. But that's a scary story, but it was a lone wolf that had some health issues, and that's probably why he attacked him, because he had some health issues and was hungry and found
an easy meal,
easy meal
wrapped up in a sleeping bag.
That's exactly right.
But nobody was killed in that incident, or was it just injuries?
No, nobody was killed in that incident.
Oh,
yeah,
thank goodness.
And it probably would have been had it not been for that other camper that was in the campground that came running over and kicked the wolf. Got him off.
Wow, that's a scary experience right there. That's something that I hope I never have to experience. But
it was crazy.
There's the family right there.
The family.
That was in Alberta. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, lucky somebody was up and paying attention, because it's in the middle of the night too, huh?
Well, I don't think he was up. I think he got woken up by the screams of the kids and the wife and everything, and jumps out of his tent and comes running. He didn't even know what the screams were about.
Yeah.
And comes running over with his flashlight, and all of a sudden, holy smokes, there's the wolf.
Well, we've had a couple coyote attacks in Colorado.
Oh, you bet. A lot of coyote attacks.
And a lot of coyote attacks on pets.
Yes.
Smaller pets like dogs and cats, right? I mean, it's just a staple growing up in the mountains. If you have a cat,
not just in the mountains. Not just in the mountains. I live in suburbia USA, down in Highlands Ranch, and we have the neighborhood app, and I don't know if you guys have ever used a neighborhood app up here, but it's an app around the country. You put in your zip code, and then everybody that's in that zip code can talk to each other about, I've got a garage sale going on, I've got this going on. But literally every day you can go on the app, and some mom is saying, don't go on the running path over in this area. Be careful with your kids, be careful with your dogs, because there's coyotes there. Or I lost my dog last night to a coyote.
Right.
The coyotes are down on the bike paths of Highlands Ranch. I see them every day when I'm running. Imagine what it will be when it will be a apex predator from Canada that's coming down.
Right.
Wait till you see what the moms of Highlands Ranch will be saying on the neighborhood app when they come down.
Yeah, that's a major issue, because that is a much larger predator that is. I mean, we're talking about predators that can take down a full-size elk or moose,
Oh, you bet.
And very synchronized and very, I guess, a lot more aggressive than a coyote, too. A coyote can be kind of elusive, I guess. I mean,
yeah, and coyotes don't hunt in packs nearly as much, I mean, not at all as much as wolves do. And so when you get a very, I don't know if you'd say sophisticated, what would be the exact word?
Yeah, no, I mean, think how smart dogs
pack
are.
hunters.
Yeah.
Right. It's going to change a lot of the way we do things in Colorado, whether it's hunting, whether it's camping, whether it's hiking, or whether it's just living in your community.
Sure.
It's going to have a huge impact.
So do we know, I mean, we kind of covered the human attack side of things. Do we know how many, like, family pets? So we're talking dogs and cats here, not livestock, because we all know that that's an issue. But do we know, like, how many pets are lost a year, or
well, I don't think we record that. I haven't seen any of those logs in any of the attacks up in Wyoming or Montana or Idaho. I don't think we track that, but certainly there's plenty of circumstantial evidence that ranchers are talking about how many of their guard dogs they've spent a lot of money on their guard dogs to protect their livestock that have been taken out by wolf packs.
I've seen a lot of photos of the dogs, and they're pretty maimed, and we won't show them on here. But
it's interesting how they do it too, because they pretty much call them out. You know, they do something that the guard dog follows them away from the property, and then once they're out there, then the pack takes them down, and they're smart animals, very smart animals.
Yeah, I'm glad I haven't experienced that with a wolf. I mean, as a kid, we've lost cats and dogs to coyotes.
Sure.
Many a times.
Sure.
Unfortunately, especially living in the mountains, it's just we hear them on our backyard every night, yipping and that sort of thing.
Sure.
So, and coyotes can do the same thing. That's how we've lost 2 dogs, where the dog has been off leash, unfortunately. And back when I grew up, you didn't
have to worry about it.
Yeah, you didn't really have to worry about it. And one coyote will come out and entice the dog into the pack,
Yep.
And it's not a good situation.
Because it's a dog's, nature.
To chase something.
To chase them down and protect the family. And so they see another dog, they're going to chase them down. And then once they're out there away from the house, away from the family, then the other coyotes or wolves will come in and take them out.
Yeah, not a good situation. So I'm a little confused too, and it hasn't been really cut and dry. So we're talking about reintroducing, or it's not reintroducing, because this brings up my next question. There's already gray wolves in Colorado that have migrated in from Wyoming. Do we know what kind of numbers those are and what's already here?
Well, I think the proponents are saying it's a reintroduction of the wolves because the wolves were here, and that's undeniable. There were wolves here. So they are reintroducing wolves. The proponents are reintroducing wolves. But if they are successful in getting the ballot passed, then they're going to be reintroducing Canadian gray wolves. And when the wolf was here 100 years ago, Colorado had, 100,000 people in the entire state. Now we have almost 7 million people in Colorado. If you add up the entire population of Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho, it's not even half of the population that we have in Colorado.
That's crazy.
So we can go into the numbers of what the impact have been to those states up there, and the human-wolf interaction has been up there. But if you drop 500 wolves into the western slope of Colorado, there's going to be conflict. I guarantee you there's going to be conflict with the wolf. And,
do we know what those exact numbers are? Is there like a set plan that if this does pass that they're going to introduce 20 at a time, or are they going to just blanket the whole state at once?
They will be working with the Division of Wildlife. If the initiative passes, the initiative says the Division of Wildlife will have to implement a plan to reintroduce the Canadian gray wolf into Colorado.
Hey, Ted, I don't mean to jump in, but who the exact movement? Who is behind the exact movement behind this? Who is the organization? Where are they sourcing the animals from? How does this exactly get make it to the proposal?
That's two great
stage?
questions. One, who is the people and where are they sourcing the wolves from? The wolves come from Canada, where they have millions of acres of open paradise where there is no humans whatsoever, where they're not having any conflicts. We're going up there and we are catching them, caging them, and flying them down here, and for lack of a better word, airdropping them into the western slope, into an environment with, like I said, 6-7 million people. There's going to be conflict, and I personally think we need to discuss the morality of that, of taking wolves from their habitat and dropping them into a state that is as populated as ours is. But the people behind it, if you look on the campaign finance reports of where the donations came to pay for the signature gatherers, it wasn't a bunch of Coloradoans that just said, well, let's go voluntarily go get the signatures and get it on the ballot. They were paid signature gatherers that may not even live in Colorado. I can almost guarantee you they didn't live in Colorado. There are professional signature gathering companies around the country that they hire these guys, and they're like gypsies, and they go from one state to another state collecting signatures. And the group that's supporting this initiative, the money that was spent to get the signatures, over 95% of the money came from out of state to fund the initiative gathering effort.
So like the really nice people who sit on the corner as you're out shopping, who approach you to ask you to sign something. It sounds really
It was
nice.
not a Colorado volunteer saying this is what I want. No, it was well funded. It was a well funded effort by very significant moneyed people who have been pushing this across the Rocky Mountain West for the last 20 years, and they did it up in Wyoming and Montana, and they're going to do it. They're attempting to do it here in Colorado.
And what do you think the driving force is behind, or why would they care if they don't live here?
Well,
in your opinion,
I want to think the best, right? I'm a passionate conservationist. I believe that we should try to bring our environment back to where we can as much as possible. I think that we need to preserve our environment as much as possible, whether it's clean water, clean air, and develop habitat for elk and moose and fish and bird, whatever you want to say. But in this situation, and I agree with environmentalists on all of that, and I believe I believe we should be regulating industry that's going to have an impact on all of those things, whether it's oil and gas or whatever it might be. But in this situation, I sense that it is a little more insidious than that, because they are using the wolf as a means to bring down the wildlife in a state, in an area, to make hunting less enjoyable, to make it less profitable, to discourage hunting on our national lands and our state lands. If you go up into northwestern Colorado, the number one elk herd pretty much in the world, definitely here in the United States, and you start to diminish that elk herd that are the trophy, it's the trophy herd for the United States. If you diminish that trophy herd to where you're not having hunters from around the country spending $10,000, $20,000 to come out and get a tag, and then to be able to hunt and stay in the hotels and go to the restaurants and things like that, because those elks are no longer there, and those hunters don't come in, or they then have to leave that unit, that hunting unit, and go to the next best hunting unit. Well, what is that going to do to people like me that aren't that aren't willing to spend $10,000, that we haven't been hunting our entire lives, and we haven't gotten all of the points that you need to have to go hunt these trophy elk. Well, now you're impacting me and my kids and their ability to be able to hunt, because those that have a ton of points are now going to these lesser units. So it's going to have a domino effect all the way down the whole hunting unit system.
Yeah. And it's not just elk, to be clear. I mean, we have
it's moose,
bighorn sheep, mountain goats. I mean,
everything.
Yeah.
And fowl and fish as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to have an impact on everything. So that's the hunting side of it. But then you look at the impact that it's going to have on grazing on our national lands. If you have the goal of the proponents, and they are on record saying this, the goal of the proponents is to have 500 wolves on the western slope. If you have if you have
That's
five,
a lot.
oh my gosh!
Didn't they only release like 60 in the Yellowstone?
Yes.
And what is that? What is that?
It's been devastating. If you look at the moose herd when they introduced the wolf into Yellowstone 15, 20 years ago, the moose herd was about a little over 9,000 moose in Yellowstone. Now the moose herd is down. No, I think that was the elk herd. The elk herd was a little over 9,000 elk, and now it's below 1,000.
So we're talking about putting 500 wolves
on the western slope.
Okay, so
imagine what we haven't even talked about the impact to the cattle industry, but imagine that they devastate cattle herds. So imagine if you are a rancher and you can either go out to Kansas or Texas or something like that with your herd where you don't have the problems, or you could go on federal lands and use your grazing fees and grazing rights on federal lands up in northwest Colorado, but your herd's being devastated by the wolf. That's happening all across the Rocky Mountains where the wolf has been reintroduced. So it's having multiple impacts. It's impacting the wildlife, so it's getting hunters off of state and federal lands. It's hurting the ranchers, so they're getting off the state and federal lands. And then I believe there is an effort to impact the oil and gas industry. It was an interesting thing that happened when Trump got elected. The day after Trump won, Obama signed a wolf protection order. I'm not exactly sure what the term was, but it was something like that. Wolf protection order, I'll just say that. And it has never been done before anywhere in the country. But it is all of northern Colorado, west of I-25, north of I-70, all the way over to Granby and Kremling in that area, over on the western slope. That whole area, now if there is a howling area where the wolves gather to howl, or if there is a den where there are pups being delivered, then you cannot develop that land. And by develop, meaning you can't drill an oil well, you can't run your oil wells, you can't.
Does that include farm and agriculture?
Farm and agriculture within 11 miles of that howling area or that the den. So you start drawing circles. If you have 500 animals on the western slope, and let's say half of those are north of I-70, you will not be able to develop.
So does that put them on the endangered species list?
Well, they are on the endangered species list, and that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, we can. There's a million wormholes.
So you're gonna destroy the oil and gas industry up in that area, and that is the industry up in that area is oil and gas.
Right.
It's one of the most productive oil and gas fields in the United States, definitely in Colorado, and the Obama administration has pretty much shut it down if we introduce the wolves.
And how many Coloradans work in oil and gas?
Oh my goodness, it's
and
huge.
make a significant living where you probably couldn't transfer that to something else, another career.
But
to where you're
how
gonna
many?
make the same money.
How much tax dollars is brought into those communities by those oil and gas workers and the hunting industry?
Right.
That's all those communities have.
I could be wrong on this, but I believe we might be the only state that allows over-the-counter, out-of-state hunting licenses on certain animals like elk and deer and.
I don't know that answer.
Yeah. Maybe that's something you could check out for us, Jeremy.
Hang in there 1 second. I was trying to pull up that bill. What was that, Bobby? What do you want to see?
I wanted to see if Colorado is the only state that accepts out-of-state people
over the counter
to
tags.
purchase a over-the-counter hunting license. So, kind of diving back into, so they're going to drop 500 wolves, and I would imagine they're not going to do it. It's not going to be 500 random wolves. They're going to have breeding pairs so they can reproduce, I would imagine.
Certainly that's the goal, is
Yeah.
to have breeding pairs.
So do we know how fast that population will grow from 500 to, let's say, 1,000, 1,500, or?
I wish I had those numbers in front of me.
Yeah.
Up in Wyoming and Montana, you were saying that they originally introduced 60 into Yellowstone, and that population has exploded, and now they're leaving Yellowstone and they're going out into the rest of the surrounding areas of the state. But the key thing up there is when they went, they didn't do it through an initiative process. They did it with hand in hand with the Clinton administration, and part of the agreement was that if they come out of Yellowstone, you can hunt them. Everywhere else in the country, like in Colorado, it is considered an endangered species, and it is against the law to hunt an endangered species. But when they did the agreement to introduce the wolves into Yellowstone, they said you can't hunt anything in Yellowstone, but if the wolves come out of Yellowstone, then you can shoot them on sight. Even with that, just like a coyote, you can shoot them on sight. Even with that understanding, the wolf population throughout Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming has exploded so much that the ag industry is being impacted massively in all three states and in Washington, because it's grown so massively that the wolves are traveling all the way over to eastern Washington.
Wow.
And into northern Colorado.
And like you said,
those wolves from Yellowstone are traveling, which is the farthest northwestern corner of Wyoming. They're traveling now all the way down to Colorado. And we have them
crazy.
In northern Colorado now.
Their migration patterns are huge.
They can travel over 1,000 miles.
And we're talking some rugged terrain too, like coming
bet.
out of the Tetons and across the Tetons and down through like Steamboat and those. That's not easy country to go through. I mean, we're talking some glaciated peaks. We're talking.
But then you get out on the plains of Wyoming. They're out there with, not a lot of food sources, and
Sure.
they're still able to travel all of that distance without any food sources.
And that scares me a little bit. It scares me a lot, actually. I mean, so we started with 60 wolves in Yellowstone. They've obviously migrated and outgrown that territory. And I think they were released in 94,
Right.
somewhere around there, right?
Yeah.
90s, late 90s. So we're talking, 20 years,
Right.
roughly?
25 years, yeah.
Wow. And like you said, we don't have the population that or the same population numbers as like Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, and we don't have the land mass, and I would say a lot more.
And we can't manage them.
Correct.
We can't kill them. We can't trap them. We can't do anything in Colorado.
And I believe, didn't Idaho just in the last couple of years, they just delisted the gray wolf because they were having so many issues, and now they've actually put a bounty on the gray wolf. I think is like $700
They've been able to hunt them up there and manage them up there, but even with all of their management and everything, they weren't able to diminish the population. So now they have increased the bounty to encourage people come in from around the country to help minimize the population.
Yeah. So what have we learned by watching these other states then, really? And why do you think we're considering this here?
Well, like I said, I think there is more to it than just introduce
having a new animal.
Reintroduce a fuzzy little puppy that was here once. I think that I think wolves are gorgeous. I think they're amazing. I really don't mind having them in Yellowstone as part of the ecosystem of Yellowstone. But I think it's unfair to the wolf to be bringing them down here to Colorado with 6-7 million people, and taking them out of their habitat up in Canada. But I also think that they do have an agenda, which is to get you and me off of the state and federal lands, and I can go into a lot of evidence to that for what they've been doing.
That's disheartening to me too, because I grew up hunting in a hunting family, and I feel like it's kind of part of my heritage, especially with just the way I was raised and where I was raised. And, I want my sons to experience that same thing, and my daughter, if she chooses to. So, yeah, that scares me a little bit. And
look at what they've done over the years, even when if it's not hunting. They don't want humans to have any impact in any way on the lands of the West. What is it, 15 years ago now, that we had that massive windstorm. It's called a blowdown up in the flat tops. I don't know if you've been up in that area.
Oh, it's incredible country.
And literally millions of pine trees instantaneously got blown over. And it was setting itself up to be a tinderbox, because they were going to dry out. They were going to get, very flammable pretty quickly. And the state and National Forest Service tried to come up with a plan to allow loggers to go in there and take that out so that we could manage it. And the radical environmentalists took us to court and stopped us from being able to do that, because they said it's part of nature and we just need to let it go. And that lawsuit hung around forever and ever and ever. So I want to give the proponents the benefit of the doubt, but when you look at some of the stuff that the radical environmentalists have done over the history of my career in natural resource policy, I see something a little more sinister behind the effort than just wanting to have wolves reintroduced.
Yeah, and I think kind of circling back to what I was saying before a little bit too, and I totally get all of that. I mean, another thing, not to sidetrack here again, but if we don't have these animals that are grazing animals in the amounts that they are, that's going to cause some wildfire concerns too, I would think.
We have a division of Parks and Wildlife for a reason.
Right.
They are professionals. They are the professionals in how to manage wildlife, how to manage the forest. And I don't believe it is good science to be going to the voters on the Front Range, where all the voters live, and saying, should we be able to introduce wolves on the western slope where these voters don't live?
That's insane to me. I think it should be up to biologists or something.
And the Division of Parks and Wildlife has studied this under the Owens administration, under the Hickenlooper administration, and both administrations. Hickenlooper signed a letter with and on behalf of the Division of Parks and Wildlife saying we should not introduce wolves into Colorado. because of the impacts that it has.
Where's their voice lately? I mean, I haven't really seen them step up to the plate or say anything. Is it because it's on the ballot and they can't? Or?
The Division of Wildlife, they are prohibited by law to all state employees are prohibited by law to speak on behalf of or against an initiative that's going to be on the ballot, whatever the initiative is.
Okay.
So their hands are tied, and I think that's appropriate. We don't want government telling the voters what to do one way or the other on any issue.
But I mean, they have a ton of biologists and wildlife experts and stuff that I think would be very helpful.
But they have done plenty of studies over the years, and that all that information is out there. And they have done studies in the past before there was an initiative on the ballot, because there's been talk of reintroducing the wolf into Colorado for all the time I've been involved in natural resource policy. And they've done the research, and they came back and they said, no, we should not introduce the wolf into Colorado because of the incredible impacts that it has on wildlife and other things. And they have said if there is a natural migration of the wolf back into Colorado, then we will manage that as the professional biologists that we are. We'll manage that and deal with that, but we shouldn't be as a part of public policy going out and introducing the wolf and trapping them and bringing them into the state.
Sure. And I think that you brought up a really good point too. I mean, and I never really thought about this, or it never really crossed my mind. So we're talking about pulling these wolves out of Canada. They're going to be airdropped, like you said, into Colorado somewhere.
Is that with parachutes?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Well, I mean, literally, that's almost what they did when they first reintroduced wolves up into Montana. They essentially did it in the middle of the night, and hardly anybody knew what was going on.
It was like brush planes that flew them in, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
What's that?
And that was the Clinton administration. And you look, so our argument is these are not Montana's wolves. These are not Canada's wolves. These are the U.S. government's wolves, because it was the Clinton administration that put together this whole idea and did it. And so all of the negative impacts and positive impacts of this should not be the responsibility of the states. It should be the responsibility of the federal government. Mm-hmm. And now you do have massive population of wolves throughout the Rocky Mountain area, yet we are still saying that they are an endangered species, and if you shoot one, you can lose your livelihood if you do that. And that's how we need to have a national policy on how to manage this problem.
Yeah, I believe in predators managing wildlife, especially outside of the hunting seasons and stuff like that, but those predators also need to be managed. We have hunting seasons on bears.
That's right.
Hunting seasons on lions. And I believe most lion tags are over the counter and super cheap. And
we're begging them. Yeah. We're begging people to go out now. So you look in California where they outlawed the hunting of lions in California. The state is now paying professional hunters that are on staff for the state to go out and hunt lions, and they're now killing more lions today than we were when they were not doing it protected.
Yeah, as sportsmen. Yeah, that's crazy. And you brought up the point that I was kind of coming back to was not only is it not fair to these other predators, and all of a sudden these elk that have been living in this habitat have all these migration patterns and trails cut and spots where they go and wallow every year and places where they winter. That's all going to get flipped upside down when you throw another apex predator in. Now you're going to have mountain lions that are going to be competing with wolves for some sort of food. You're going to have bears in the same situation.
But also, bears don't hunt in packs.
Correct.
Mountain lions don't hunt in packs. The wolf hunts in packs, and they are a very lethal pack hunter. And so it's going to put them on a very uneven playing field when it comes to those other apex hunters that are currently here.
Yeah. And, it's not fair to the wolf, just like you said. It's
right.
not fair to really any of them, in my opinion. But
especially the wolf.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that.
Imagine, you're up there and...
I've never really thought about it on that side, but yeah, I guess, they're just the main subject, so you don't really think about their feelings or what feelings they have, right? Or
the conflict that they're going to have with humans when they come down here is going to be huge. They're going to be running into cars. They're going to be going to ranches. And I shouldn't say this publicly, but if I were a rancher and my herd was getting demolished by a wolf pack, whether it's against the law or not, I can't imagine if I were a rancher that I would just watch that happen.
Right.
So we're taking these wolves out of Canada where there are no ranchers that are shooting them. There are no cars or trucks or semis that are hitting them, and we're dropping them down here, and we're putting them in a situation where they're going to come into conflict with humans all the time.
And putting law-abiding citizens in a situation where they can be criminals.
That's right.
Yeah.
For protecting their property.
Protecting their property, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Their livelihood.
How does this not become like a regional thing where they're dropping them on the western slope? How, obviously it's not going to impact it immediately on the Front Range. How is it not voted regionally? Like if something was dropped in my backyard here, I wouldn't expect.
It's just the way the wording of the initiative is. It is a statewide initiative to put it on the ballot.
Well, and these things have such a migration pattern. Like, look how far Yellowstone is from Colorado, and there was a wolf that was just hit on I-70 2 or 3 years ago, I think, right?
Well, we found an entire pack at the beginning of the year. We did it, and it was interesting that as soon as they got the signatures to get it on the ballot, all of a sudden they find a pack. I thought the timing of that was interesting from the.
It really is, and.
So yes, that pack has come down from Wyoming. So those packs that'll be on the western slope, it's not that far to get from the western slope over to Evergreen.
Yeah,
and there's an abundant stock of food over here in Evergreen, as you well know.
Yeah, it's everywhere. So I mean, it's very plausible that if this happens, they could end up in your backyard. They could end up in your backyard right now.
That's right.
Yeah. So. Where was I going with this? I'm trying to blank.
I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
No, it's all good, man. We're diving off.
Sorry.
This is such a crazy subject, and there's so many little fingers of information that spiral out, into many different. It impacts a lot of different things.
It does.
And we're barely just getting into this, but I know that Colorado Division of Wildlife in the last couple months since COVID, they've had more wolf sightings than they've ever had before just because more people are using public lands and stuff like that. So, like, we've had some recent sightings where they actually have pictures. So if you go to their Twitter, their Instagram feed or anything like that, you can look up some of those pictures. It's pretty crazy. So, I mean, we're not really concerned about, just from their track record, we're not really concerned about wolves attacking people per se right now that we know of, looking at other states other than what happened in British Columbia that we know of. What do you think the most dangerous thing is? I know that they can help transmit chronic wasting disease, which is already a problem here. So that really concerns me as a hunter.
That's not the worst, though.
It's not. Oh, God.
There's a disease called the hydatid disease, and Jeremy, if you go down a little bit, it's going to show that on there. The hydatid disease is a tapeworm disease, essentially, and it is absolutely disgusting.
So it's a parasite.
Yes, it's a parasite, and the way it is transmitted, and canines are the apex.
Oh my God, this is terrible.
Distributor, I guess, of the parasite, and so that gets into their feces, and then they poop out the parasite in their feces, and the eggs then can be aerosol distributed through the air, and other dogs, regular domesticated canines, can go roll in it and then bring it into the house, and the kids are petting the dog, and so the kids get it.
So it's transferable to humans.
It's transferable, definitely transferable to humans.
Holy shit. What?
They poop in somebody's lawn, and then you mow the lawn, and then it's aerated, and then it's going throughout the whole area. They poop in a hay field. There you go, right there. You poop in a hay field, and the wolf poops in a hay field, and then you bring your what's it called, combines in to harvest the hay, and then that aerates it throughout all of the hay, and then we sell that hay to our horses, to our livestock, to the animals that we eat, and we eat that livestock, and then we get it. It is a horrible, horrible disease, and it is spreading throughout the northern Rocky Mountains right now because of the introduction of the Canadian gray wolf.
Wow. So are there people that are recorded with this disease currently in like Wyoming or someplace? Or?
Yeah, but it's definitely in our wildlife. There's hunters up there that cut open an elk, and the whole thing is infested with cysts.
Elk lung.
And all they can do, I mean, you spend all this money to go up there and hunt, and you take down your one elk that you get for the year, and you open it up, and it's totally infected with these cysts. It's pretty disgusting and dangerous because it's killing the wildlife, but it also has the ability to kill humans.
So where do these cysts, do we know? I mean, you might not know.
It all started from the Canadian gray wolves in Canada.
Wow.
And it's coming down to the United States now because we've introduced it.
That's scary shit, man.
This is the scariest thing to me, and I think it's if it gets into our food source. To date, we don't know for a fact that it's got into our food source up in Montana and Wyoming. But if it were to get into our food source, it would devastate the livestock industry, the beef industry. You wouldn't be able to export beef or anything like that. We have no evidence that that's happened, but imagine if that did happen. But imagine if it got into our water source, and we are not cleaning it for one reason or another.
Well, we know that animal feces gets into our water source all the time
because
we have what's the name of that other disease?
Literally.
I'm drawing a blank here again. Damn it. I'll think of it.
I know what you're talking about. When you're hunting, you want to be...
You got to make sure you have clean water. If you're in a river, you just don't go drink. Even though it looks clean, it may not be.
Most likely is not.
Yeah.
Yes.
But man,
and that's not fatal. That just gives you diarrhea.
Right. Yeah.
The hydatid disease is fatal. It's fatal to livestock. It's fatal to wildlife, and it's fatal to humans. So where do
these cysts develop in a human body? Are they
everywhere? Yep. In the brain, in the lungs.
In the brain?
Everywhere. Yep. Ooh. And it's very, very, very painful. If you go to if you go to this website that's at the top there, the Stop the Wolf Coalition, they have an interview on there with a gal in Montana who has hydatid disease, and she thinks it was from her dog going out and rolling in.
Well, think about how many people have dogs. I mean, like almost every modern family.
Right. They go out and they roll around in the poop from the wolf. Then they come inside and you pet your domesticated pet.
Well, not only that, if the elk get it, my dog goes and rolls in elk crap all the time.
Sure.
And I get irate over it because then I have to give her a bath. But she loves to do it, and. Yep. So I would imagine
it's what dogs do, right?
It would transfer to theirs as well,
right?
Correct?
You bet.
Oh man, parasites are fucking gnarly. It's just not. That is the scariest thing to me.
Yeah.
Though. You just changed
I'm
my
not,
mind.
I'm not afraid of the wolf attacking me, though.
I'm sorry to all the listeners out there. I didn't mean to make this into a horror story, but I hope that they're getting something out of this. I hope that,
as a trail runner, I don't know if we had wolves reintroduced into Colorado. I don't know if I would run at night in Colorado, just because it would scare the bejesus out of me to run at night with wolves. But the hydatid disease, that's scarier. I mean, this is scary. It's like it could devastate Colorado. And the best part is that pack of wolves that came down from Wyoming that came here, we requested that the division test the scat from the wolves, and they tested it, and yes, indeed, they are Canadian gray wolves, and they are from the packs that were sent down into Montana.
But are they positive for the hydatid disease?
But the state would not release the results of the disease if they
pretty
tested
much
for
have
disease.
I mean,
our group had to do a CORA request, a Colorado Open Records request, to get that information because they have the hydatid disease, and the state didn't want that information out there.
So, fuck, man, that's horrible. So
just one pack. Just one pack.
And we're talking about how many wolves do we think are in Colorado currently?
Almost every pack, I don't want to say every, but almost every pack that has been introduced into the United States over the last 25 years has the hydatid disease, because that's where it comes from. That is the only place in North America that we have it is the Canadian gray wolves up in north.
Yeah, that's way scarier than getting attacked to me.
Yeah.
I think that anything that you can't see, like, for example, what's going on right now, coronavirus or any sort of parasites like that are just, I mean, I've traveled out of the country a bunch, and I've been to some third world countries, and for some reason, whatever I can't see, like I could see a wolf and probably not be as scared as I'm going to be hypochondriac type stuff if.
But there's a reason why Muslims 200, 300 years ago would not allow dogs to be in their communities, is because of the hydatid disease. This
there you go. That's the brain. That's the cyst. Oof.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do we know? I mean, obviously, Game and Fish has got to know about this.
Oh, everybody knows about this.
I didn't know about it until now.
We did the CORA request through the division, and they gave us the results. And they didn't want to give it to us. The administration, the Polis administration, did not want this information to be out.
So is there a plan for the wolves that they're going to reintroduce or force introduce, however you put it,
to be tested first
before they are? And is there a vaccine for it?
No, there's no vaccine for it. There's
man. I'm sorry.
Elimination of the wolf is the only vaccine for it.
Wow. That is not a good. I mean,
there's a reason.
How did this end up on the ballot? It's unbelievable to me. I mean,
you look at the devastation that happened with the introduction of the wolf into Yellowstone, and what the devastation was to the wildlife population up there. Why would you want to bring that to Colorado, the trophy elk population of the world? Why would you want to introduce the wolf into that? Then you bring in the impacts that it's going to have on the economy in those areas. What's it going to have the impact on the oil and gas industry? What's going to be the impact? But then you bring in the hydatid disease.
And I'm sure the hydatid disease kills animals just the same as it.
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet. And we have evidence of a moose in Colorado having it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man. And that's another thing I kind of wanted to touch on. We've just now got the moose population built up in Colorado, and it frustrates me, some of the decisions that we make here. So we've spent all this money, and I don't even know how much. Maybe that's something you could look up to, Jeremy, is just see how much we've spent on repopulating moose into Colorado. And now we actually have a population that we can manage.
It's a hard number. I've asked the division for that number.
Really?
It's a hard number to come up with. But,
okay.
But we do know that Colorado's ecosystem is the best ecosystem in the Rocky Mountain region for moose, and that's why they have exploded to the numbers that they have in such a short amount of time since we introduced the moose here. The altitude is great, the vegetation is great, everything is great for the moose, and we've spent a lot of money on this project. And that's another thing.
That'll be the first thing to go, in my opinion, right?
Well,
Because
I don't know. How much money have we spent on the Gunnison sage grouse?
right.
We have spent millions and millions and millions of dollars to protect the Gunnison sage grouse. So now we've spent all this money to get them to a population that they're sustainable, and we've got the EPA off our backs. So now let's introduce a wolf to come and eat them all.
to decimate it, yeah.
I mean, the whole
Well, for
process
example,
is
like,
crazy.
There's a spot that I used to go as a kid, right? And I mean, we used to go in on 4-wheelers. But you had to have like an off-road vehicle to get down there, right? And it was a wilderness area. And I'm not going to tell you where it's at because I don't want any more people showing up there.
Right.
But I don't know if it was Division of Wildlife or whoever, Parks and Rec, came in and put down road base. Now you can drive a minivan back into there. Well, now the influx in people that are visiting the space is having a major impact on the riverbanks. It's having an impact on the wildlife. So now they're requiring that you have to have a hunting license to even enter that state land. And it's like, if they would have just left the road the same and not spent all that money, I'm talking like 20, 30 miles of 4-wheel drive trails that they've turned into a dirt road, basically. And now you can't stop the people from coming in there, so they're going to do it by regulating it with a hunting or a fishing license only to go into those areas. So it's like we build something up and then it's almost like you're tearing it back down. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's not. I mean, and I'm just a dumb mountain kid, right? But I have common sense. I mean, like,
it drives me crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
it drives
as
me
somebody
nuts.
who's voted on all of these fundings for all of this habitat protection for endangered species or potentially endangered species, for us to just say that doesn't matter. We protected all of this habitat for all of these endangered species, and we've done great work. The division has done great work, and the ranchers have done great work, bent over backwards to protect these animals. And now we're going to say, let's bring in the wolf to eat the ferret, to eat the sage grouse, to eat the Preble's meadow jumping mouse, to eat,
And all you have to do is go look at that biologist study from Wyoming where he tracked from when they repopulated the wolves to the moose decline, and it's down like 90% in 20 years.
Right.
And to the point where moose are ending up in suburban areas because they don't want to go to the national forest. They know
moose
they're going to get
elk.
eaten. Yeah.
Moose and elk. So we're destroying the fences. We're destroying the crops that these ranchers have put in because the elk and the moose are running away from the.
That's my next question for you, and I didn't really know much about it, but I did do a little bit of homework on it because there's so many ranchers and farmers and horse farms or ranches, whatever you call them here in Colorado, and I believe that that's a big part of Colorado heritage since I was a kid. I mean, and we've slowly starting to see those go away just from the influx in people and areas getting developed or suburbanized. And when I kind of went down this rabbit hole and started looking at some of the impacts that Idaho was having and Wyoming, and the reparations, there are reparations that are set up for farmers and ranchers, right, if their livestock is killed by a wolf.
But Yes.
Okay.
But the
But
ability
who's
to
paying
prove
those?
it, the
Yeah.
ability to prove that that they are being hurt by the wolf is really, really hard.
That was my next question for you, was myopathy. Because I didn't.
You have to bring out a federal and a state, possibly a local professional biologist to come out and confirm that the kill was done by a wolf, and so that's expensive to do that. And then a lot of times ranchers don't realize that they were killed by the wolf, because the wolf doesn't kill for food. The wolf kills for sport. So they may chase a cow down, a pregnant cow down, and there may not be any bite marks, but they chase the cow down and it doesn't take very long for a cow to get overheated and collapse just from running, because they're large animals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you may lose 2, 3, 4 cows that are pregnant, and that's not 2 or 3 cows. That's multiplied by 2, because they have a calf in them. So there's not bite marks. How do you prove that cow has been killed by a wolf?
And that's
but
what
even
is
if,
considered myopathy, correct?
But no, the myopathy is if they actually have bite marks.
Oh, okay.
But myopathy is when they're running them down. Yeah, but then you can they do bite, but it's just the fangs. So they're not taking any flesh out. They're not doing anything. So you don't see anything. So then you have to cut the hide back and look to see if there's actually the bite marks in the flesh underneath the hide, and so a lot of farmers don't see any bite marks, and they don't think that's what it is. That to me is not the worst part, because they are getting compensated if they do figure it out. But what about the wildlife?
Yeah.
Who's compensating us for the loss of the wildlife that's going to have a huge impact on a whole bunch of industries, whether it's outfitters, whether it is the restaurateurs,
Sure.
whether it is all of these people that are losing their livelihoods because we are decimating the herds? Who's going to compensate them for that?
And there's a lot of Colorado ranchers that outfit at the
You
same
bet.
time, because they need that double income to
bet.
sustain what they have.
They can't do it any other
Right.
way. They can't do it.
Yeah,
any
they're
other
using
way.
their land for a dual purpose.
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet. Some of this land up there is so rugged that it's hard to run cattle on it. So in the small areas where it's not so rugged, they're able to run cattle, but the rest of it, they're able to supplement the ability to stay on the ranch by the outfitting on it.
And who's paying those reparations? Would it be taxpayers, or is it
Hunters.
okay?
It comes from the hunting fees. Well, what happens when hunters stop coming to Colorado?
Yeah.
That's the way we pay for depredation right now. If a mountain lion kills livestock, or a bear kills livestock, it's paid for with hunter's fees. Well, what happens if you bring in 500 wolves and you kill off so much wildlife that the hunters don't come in the numbers that they did, and so you're not getting the fees that you used to, and so now who's going to be paying for the depredation of the livestock? It's
It's a
such a
slippery
complicated slippery slope.
Man, there's just I feel like we need more time. Like November's pretty close.
And how do you get that message out, right? We've talked, an hour or so?
Yeah.
And it's so complex.
And we're all over the place. And
All
I hope
over
we're
the
not,
place. And
I hope we're keeping everybody on track here, but
But how do you teach that to the voters so that they
Right.
can make a rational decision?
well, and I think that's kind of the thing that's crazy to me, that it's left up to voters and not biologists, or people that have the actual facts. I mean, we're essentially voting on an animal just because we think they're cool, but maybe we don't know all the underlying stuff, right? I mean,
I go all over the state to talk about this,
Yeah.
especially on the Western Slope with those folks that are going to be impacted. And their point is, if we're going to introduce them, all right, let's introduce them. Let's introduce them on the Front Range. where the voters are.
Yeah.
Imagine dropping 500
At Red Rocks Amphitheater.
On Pearl Street Mall or the 16th Street Mall.
Shit.
They wouldn't put
Yeah.
up with that for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
They'd be running around.
Well, and those wolves are going to migrate over the Continental Divide. It's not that hard. If they can come out of the Tetons and Yellowstone, no problem,
so it's
Yeah.
not fair to the residents of the Western Slope.
No,
It's not fair to the wolf. It's not fair to the Western Slope.
And a majority of the voters are in that metropolitan areas of Colorado, for sure.
Pearl
And
Street and the
it's-
16th Street Mall.
Well, look how big Colorado Springs is now,
Right.
and Fort Collins and Greeley. I mean, all those spots are just, the influx is huge. So this kind of brings up another issue on the ranching side of stuff. A lot of elk and deer and moose, and they tend to winter range they come out of the mountains, and they tend to winter range on south-facing slopes. So all your ski resorts, right, are pretty much southern-facing slopes, and a lot of the ranches as well. I would imagine that the wolves are going to follow the food source, right? I mean, again, I'm just a dumb mountain kid, but I got common sense. They're going to go where the food's at. So, is there anything that is set in stone that, and I think that we've already gone over this, but once those wolves do come into those ranches and stuff like that, there's no way that a rancher can protect his own livestock.
Not in Colorado.
Yeah.
Not in Colorado.
And not in an 11-mile radius? Is that the case too?
north of I-70.
Wow.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. North of I-70 is you can't develop during that howling season or that denning season. But throughout all of Colorado, you cannot kill or trap a wolf. It's against the law. They are an endangered species, and you can't do that. Having said that, my organization is the Stop the Wolf Pack.
Yeah.
And we are working hard to get the Department of Interior to delist the wolf as an endangered species, because if we are going to introduce them,
we need to manage them.
we have to allow the state to manage it. And honestly, I don't believe the current administration has any appetite for managing the wolf if it comes in. But under the current administration, they're not going to be here forever. So if we pass the law to introduce them in 2020, it's going to take several years to set up a management plan to get them introduced. So hopefully by the time the next administration comes in, they'll be more willing to put together a management plan that allows private property owners to protect their livestock and their property.
Sure. And do we have any sort of graphs, or do you guys have any sort of research on how this will affect hunting revenue and how it'll affect parks and wildlife?
That's a great question. Not parks and wildlife, but the division has done some numbers and put together some numbers, and we have all of that. If you go to the Stop the Wolf Coalition, they're an educational organization that has done a lot of great research and education on all of this information, but they've been working with the counties to pass resolutions in opposition to introduction, not just this resolution, but the introduction of the wolf, because of the impact that it'll have on counties and revenue and stuff like that. And the estimate that we are coming up with, I think the state that it's going to be on the Blue Book is like $300,000 per wolf that it will cost the state and local government to introduce the wolf. I think that's really, really, really low. I think it's going to be more like $1 million a wolf for managing everything that goes along with that, and the impact it's going to have on local economies. So imagine if you bring in 100 wolves, get up to 500 wolves, what will the impact of that be to the local economies and to the state if it's going to be $1 million a wolf. It'll be devastating.
Yeah. Wow,
Well,
man,
like
that's a lot of information to digest, and I urge any of our listeners, whether you're a hunter or not, if you're a hiker, a rock climber, a mountain biker, please go and do your research on this issue, because I feel like we might just end up at the ballot box and just check a yes or a no without even really knowing the impacts. And I feel like this is something that could impact anybody in Colorado in their own yard at some point, especially after learning about the Hydatid disease. That's probably the most concerning to me, I think.
And as a taxpayer, $1 million a wolf.
Yeah.
For what reason? We're going to spend $1 million per wolf to bring the Hydatid disease into Colorado. We're going to spend $1 million a wolf to devastate our wildlife population. We're going to spend $1 million a wolf to destroy our pets and put our kids in danger, not only from the wolf but from the Hydatid disease. You put all those things together. Yes, I love wolves. Yes, I want to see wolves.
They're a cool animal.
They're a beautiful, amazing animal. But is that what's in the best interest of Colorado?
So can I ask you this? And I don't know if I'm sure you guys have thought this far ahead. I don't know if you can comment on it. But if this does pass in this upcoming ballot, what is the Stop the Wolf organization's next step besides delisting to kind of help your guys' side of the fence, help these ranchers, farmers, hunters, people that are on your guys' side of the fence?
Well, it's definitely has to be to have it delisted, because the way it's set up right now, we don't have the initiative does not give us that ability to work with the federal government the way they did in Wyoming and Montana. So if there's no way we will be able to manage the population and the impact that it's going to have on the entire state. So my goal is to stop it in November. And if there's folks that are interested in it, they can go to our website, stopthewolfpack.com. That is my number one goal between now and November, is to make sure that it fails, to get this information out there and tell people why they shouldn't vote for it.
Okay.
And it's not because I don't love wolves and think they're great. They are. Let's go up to Montana and Yellowstone and see them up there.
Or northern Colorado now, right? Yeah, good luck finding them.
And they have Hydatid disease,
yeah.
Right? I don't want them in Colorado.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't want a wolf with Hydatid disease coming to Colorado. The devastation that will cause to our entire economy is going to be devastating if they come down here. And they are not delisted, and we cannot eliminate them if they are in our state. The division will come after us, and they will get the feds there, and you will lose your guns, you will lose your ability to hunt, you will lose your livelihood if you are a rancher and you kill a wolf. And it's not just protecting their herds when you're talking about the Hydatid disease. You're protecting your family and your neighbors about the Hydatid disease. And if it's not delisted and they're coming to Colorado and we are literally going up and grabbing them out of Canada and dropping them into Colorado, we have nobody else to blame but ourselves.
Hey, Ted, really quick, being in this debate, you must hear all the pros that the other side of this debate are tossing to the general public. What are, say, like the top two reasons that you're hearing? The only thing that I'm really seeing is controlling of the elk population, which obviously we should be able to manage. People should be able to manage.
They want to stabilize. I mean, the argument is
it's also that documentary, right? That the Yellowstone documentary where everything's better now, right?
Right.
Because
they want to stabilize the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I have not seen any evidence that our ecosystem is unstable.
Right.
But that is their whole argument. And they say that our elk population is overpopulated, and here in Evergreen, that message resonates, I'm sure. Up in Estes Park, I'm sure that message resonates. But bringing in a apex predator into Evergreen and into Estes Park is not the answer. I can assure you, it's not the answer.
I agree. Yeah, I think that they just actually opened up Rocky Mountain National Park to hunting for the first time in a long
Right.
time this year, just to help manage that. And I think
Right.
Division of Wildlife's pretty good at doing all that. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time. I know you have a ton of issues that you need to go tackle somewhere else.
No, I appreciate the time. This has been wonderful. Thank you
and,
for giving us the opportunity to get the message out.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for educating us. If our listeners want to learn some more about this issue, do you guys have a ton of information on your website, and it's stopthewolf.org?
StopTheWolfPack.com.
Okay.
And then for the last 12 months, 18 months, StopTheWolfCoalition.org has been doing all of the research, doing all of the education, and they do great work. I came on in February with the PAC, which is the political side of it, to say vote for, vote against. So you can go to either one of those websites and learn more about the whole issue.
Awesome. And then do you guys have a Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, any social media platforms that you're on?
We have Facebook for both of them. I don't yet for the PAC for on Instagram or Twitter or anything like that. I don't know if the coalition does, because I don't do any work with the coalition. It's completely separated.
Okay.
Also, that's PAC.
Yes, PAC, Political Action Committee.
Stop the Wolf PAC.
Okay.
I thought that was a great
Yeah.
play on
It
words.
is very good. So good that you can get confused.
Yes, PAC.
All right.
Exactly.
And then if people want to support you guys, how can they do that? What's the best way?
Right there. Go to our website, hit the donate button in the top right-hand corner, donate to this effort. As I said, the proponents spent almost $1 million from out of state to get this on the ballot. We're just going to be grassroots, mom and pop across the country, giving $50, $100 here and there. If you can write $1 million check, God bless you. There is no campaign finance limits. But if you can go and donate, we would appreciate it. StopTheWolfPack.com.
Another point of this, too, is it's not just affecting Coloradans. If you come to visit Colorado and you want to help support your campaign, then
You bet. If you're a hunter, that come to Colorado, you should be contributing to our PAC. But I know you want to go, but there's one other thing.
No, this is your time.
The state of Utah has said that if this passes, they will sue the state of Colorado to stop the introduction, because we're dropping them on the west slope. The border's right. The border's right there, right?
And
There's not a wall. Trump hasn't built a wall there on the border of Colorado and Utah. So they have sued, and they said, if you introduce wolves into Colorado, we will sue the state and blame the state for it. So, and that's the state legislature, and that's the governor that has said that.
Are they currently suing Wyoming then, or do they have any recorded wolves? And
yes,
they do.
I don't know if it is publicly recorded, but they have evidence that there is wolves in Utah from Wyoming.
Yeah. Wow.
They're scared
What a
to
mess,
death.
man.
They are scared to death that
I'm scared
this
to death.
initiative will pass.
I mean, yeah. I love Evergreen. I grew up here, and I don't want it affecting my family. So
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for the education. I'm
bet.
sure that I will be calling you with some more questions at some point, or hitting you up, and I'm sure we're going to get a ton of feedback from this episode and a ton of questions. Is there some place where people could contact somebody directly via email or something like that if they have a question?
Go
or a
into
concern?
our website. Or the Facebook site. The Facebook site is the same. Stop the Wolf Pack, and communicate with us on the site or on Facebook, and we'll get somebody to get back to you as quickly as possible. Or I will, for sure.
All right, Jeremy, you good back there?
All good, man.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and I urge you to go educate yourself on this issue before November, please.
That's great. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.